Welcome back to What It Takes. Today, we're diving into a story that's quite unique and is inspiring to me. So I'm excited for you guys to hear this. Our guest, Paran Bear, co-founder of I Am Heart, a groundbreaking organization that teaches heart rhythm meditation. But before he became a master of mindfulness and heart-centered living, Paran had a thriving career in engineering and corporate leadership. So today, we plan to explore his fascinating transformation from boardrooms of Boston to creating a business rooted in spiritual growth and connection. We'll hear about the challenges he faced in merging spirituality with entrepreneurship, the lessons that he learned, and the powerful impact of leading with heart. So let's dive in. Hello, how are you today, Paran?
Thank you. I'm very glad to be here.
So let's just dive right into the early days. Can you tell us about your background in engineering and corporate leadership?
The first company I worked for was IBM at a pie in the sky research center where they didn't even ask me what I needed to do. I mean, it was do whatever you want. A wonderful place to work, but no applications were necessary. It was pie in the sky research. I was there for a while, and then I worked in a similar place in another company. But I wanted to get into the nuts and bolts, like how do you make this stuff work? I'm a computer scientist by training. I have degrees in computer science. And so I was early in the computer business. I'm 80 years old, so I was working in computers like 70 years ago. And in those days, they were very large machines, so very different. I wanted to get into robotics and I wanted to get into machines that make a difference. So I started a company in high-speed computerized composting. It turns out if you if you computerize the process, it goes very fast instead of a long time. And I started another company in wind energy, and I started a company in running portfolios for mutual fund uh, managers. In between, I did a lot of corporate consulting. I consulted in many large companies. Citibank was one of my big customers, and I consulted with the lead managers and the direct reports. So I learned a lot about consulting. I also worked for a large consulting company before I started my own. But recently, I've been starting a company that's all about teaching people meditation because I realized that business leaders, whether they're entrepreneurs or they're working for big companies, there's certain things they need, and it's trainable.
That's amazing. So, what actually sparked that change? Because that's quite a journey. And it seems like, at least in the beginning, there was some uh, natural flow of a lot of that makes sense with your background and all that kind of stuff. And then this is seemingly not at all like that. But I'm sure there was something that kind of sparked that transition. What was that for you?
When I was 27, I met a spiritual teacher, and he was a Sufi, which means a non-denominational, doesn't belong to anything kind of person, but a very, very wise sage. And that's what I was looking for. And he took me under his wing, and I became his main student, and that's what I do now. We have an authentic lineage of people that have been there. It's a it's a program which leads to illumination, a lofty concept, but it's you see, it's actually possible with the heart to send light out of your heart, visible light. You can send light, enough light that we can measure it with a machine. And when you feel like you've got light coming out of your chest, you can do things. You're fearless. And that's what I want to help people become is fearless. You do
That's
it with
awesome.
you do it with your heart. The mind doesn't get it. The mind's afraid. The heart's courageous.
So, what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced in building a heart-centered business like that?
Uh, well, we started using the word meditation at a time when that wasn't a good word. We started on the East Coast of the United States, and I would say to people, I teach meditation, and they would say, why would you do that? And then we moved to the West Coast, and people say, oh, what kind? So, they'll say the audience has changed. America has learned a lot about meditation. Now we teach internationally. We teach people all over the world, and things have progressed. We've learned
Yeah.
we've learned a lot about teaching as well. I wasn't a teacher by trade. I was an engineer. Engineers like to fix things.
Yes, absolutely. But there's definitely some understanding of how things work and the mind of an engineer that seems to work really well with what you're doing right now. So, for those unfamiliar, what is heart rhythm meditation and how does that differ from other practices?
We work with energy. The heart is the main energy source in the body. It creates a magnetic field, which is measurable. And this magnetic field, extends out infinitely. There's no edge to it. So our magnetic fields are interacting all the time. And through that magnetic field, you can learn things about other people because you receive their field. You can step into it, sort of thing, and you can feel it, what it does to you. It does something to your heart. And but conversely, you can energize them by sending energy back. I mean, this sounds like I'm using poetry, but it's measurable stuff. These are energies we know how to work with, and we know how to direct them. It's not difficult. Um, but it was important to make the transition from the mind to the heart, and I think that's what a lot of business owners are trying to do. Is they know they've got resources inside, but they don't know how to get to them. And it's so important for business owners and entrepreneurs of all kinds. Use your heart. That's where the power is. That's where the conviction is. And when you speak from your heart, people listen to you. You speak from your mind, they argue.
That's so true. And I tell my kids that all the time. You know the truth when you hear it because it just sounds different. So, speaking with that authority and authenticity and that truth from your heart is so different than hearing your mind, spew out some things. So that's really cool. How did you translate that personal practice into a scalable business model?
We had to teach teachers. We started out teaching teachers, and now we have hundreds of teachers. And so the teachers then are responsible for growing the organization. One person can only teach so many people directly, um, something like 50, I think. But those 50, if you teach 50 people who teach 50 people who teach 50, it gets bigger. So that's how you do it.
That's a great concept. So, what's the most significant lesson that you've learned then as an entrepreneur on that side of things?
You have to have good people and attract people by your ideals. It isn't enough to say, we're going to make a lot of money. Well, you don't get good people that way. You get good people by saying, we're going to change the world. We're going to do something that's significant. We're going to build a legacy for you that you can tell your grandchildren about what you were involved with, what you were part of. This is something that's important. It's not just trendy, and it's going to last. You want to be part of that? That's different, than just recruiting. And so finding high quality people, HQP we call them, requires this um, pull, which from the ideal. It's like, what are they interested in? What would people like to be associated with? And and help them understand that working for your company will help them progress in their own ideals. It'll help them become better people, and it'll help them with the things that they think are important in the world. Then you'll get good people.
That's actually amazing. Attract people through your ideals, keep
Yeah.
them by developing theirs. And do you have any examples of CEOs or businesses that you've transformed through your teachings?
Yes.
I'd love to hear any stories that come to mind.
Um, what I try to do with people is like I did at Citibank, work with this levels of what you're concerned about. What business people start off being concerned about is money. You know, I want to make a profit, but it's not how to get there. You know, if you start off with that that direction doesn't lead anywhere. So you have to pick what is the product that'll make profit, right? But focusing on a good product is important and necessary, but it's not enough. To build a big company, a good company, you need to focus not on the product, but on the people who make a good product. And that product makes a profit. So there's three levels. Instead of working on the profit, you work on the product. And in order to make it, don't even focus on the product, focus on the people who can create products, who can create profits. And then there's a fourth level, which is you have to build a culture which attracts the good people who make good products, who make profits. And that's that's what you can do. And to do that, you have to use some kind of understanding of who people are. So we work with archetypes, types of people. And we can judge an archetype of a person by their energy. Is something like body language, but it's not that. It's in the tone of the voice. It's in the way they look at you. It's in everything. You can train it. It's not difficult because you get this experience, you get this assessment inside your body. Right? So I'm talking to you. I get a feeling for you, and I can feel that in myself. I can feel it in my own heart. And in a company, you need an array of people. Don't get all the same kind of people. You need a group, a different kind of different people. So we talk about 12 different archetypes of people, and you need all of them, to cover the territory.
Yeah, we say that all the time in our line of work. And I think that's one of the pitfalls that I think a lot of entrepreneurs, especially small business owners, when they're creating, um, scalable models and things like that, they're looking for people like themselves.
Like themselves.
And we always say, if you get the full spectrum of people, you're covering everything. And the more I've learned and the longer I've spent in doing what we do is everyone has a role to play. And the more we can tap into everyone's strengths and really own those strengths and help them to
Yes.
really maximize their strengths, we cover so much more as a company and as capabilities as if we can invest in them and what they're naturally gifted at, what they veer toward and are able to learn and grow. And where we have gaps, I think you have to teach and learn up to the gaps. If you have, obviously it's important to get the job done. There are certain needs that need to be met. But if there really are truly holes there and not the right people to fill them, then we need to widen our search and bring in people that can, but also honor and celebrate the people that you have and put them in roles where they're going to succeed because they will push your company forward as well. And so, kind of like you were saying, investing in the people is what pushes your product forward too
Right.
and
Right.
helping to grow them. So
Right.
you've worked on I think what's really interesting to me is you're telling me, oh yes, I've got an assessment of you and maybe we do this offline, but I'm dying to hear what that is for me. But you've worked on research documenting the physiological impacts of meditation, and you have scientific validation that's influencing your work. You've referenced it even a couple of times in this conversation. And I always am all about the data, the data, the data, but there's a lot of things that I don't have the capability of measuring that I know that I'm measuring
Yes.
somehow, some way. I'm like,
That's
this stuff is very measurable. I just don't know how to quantify it for you. But if and a simple example of this is, oh, we always I have my schedule for the day, just simply like whatever you have planned for your daily tasks, right? And you find that time and time and time again, it doesn't go as planned. And a lot of people get frustrated for that. And I really never understood that. I had a plan, but more so that I can kind of start the bike go, pedaling, but I very easily can turn it left or right or wherever it goes, wherever my day takes me based on whatever the need is. And that plan is there to kind of hold me steady and keep me moving forward. Um, but I see a lot of people that we work with getting frustrated with it not going as planned. And I'm like, but can't you make that part of the plan that there are going to be certain, and it's so quantifiable that it is going to be disrupted. You are not going, the data shows that you are not going to do this plan from point A to point Z as perfectly, scheduled out the way that you do every day. So the stress really comes when that feeling of I can't control this and things are happening beyond my control. And we've had to try to quantify that for people, but also shift their way of thinking to plan for the unplanned, plan for the unexpected need that comes up to kind of shift that. And you see it helps people that are able to grasp that. And that's one example of something that is a little bit off of what you and I are talking about, but it's a very applicable example of something that I do in my daily life that's like, I can't quantify this for you, or I don't have the tools or the knowledge or the expertise on how to do that. But I do know that my own personal, data shows me that this is proven, So I want to hear from you about real actual research and documentation that you've been able to gather and incorporate into your daily work that I love how science and spiritual sides kind of connect. And I don't know if I'm being, kind of like you were saying, like the pie in the sky, pulling into all this existential stuff. But I think a lot of it is a lot less um, unpredictable than we think. I think a lot
There-
of it you can count on and see and measure.
there's some simple things. There are trends. There are things that are distractions. They blow in the wind. But there's something inside you which is like a compass. It always points in the same direction. And that's a deep desire that the heart has that has to do with the purpose of your life. You're here for some reason, and you want to make steps toward that purpose. And those taking those steps will give you tremendous happiness. You'll feel very, very good about it. And lots of things will come in the way to try to take you in other directions, and some of those things are valuable. But at the end of the day, if you don't do what you set out to do, what your heart wanted you to do all along, ever since you were a little kid, in the end of your life, if you don't do that one thing, you could have done 100 things otherwise, but that one thing, you won't be happy without that one thing.
Yeah, I see that. I see that. So, what advice would you give to someone starting a business rooted in passion or purpose?
What would you die for? That's what you live for. Whatever you'd give your life for, that's what makes your life worth living.
Wow. Wow, that's really good. Whatever you die for, that's what you live for. Yeah, isn't it kind of crazy that we have to
But
think in such extremes like that to really kind of
you're
get it
gonna
sometimes?
you're giving your life to your work, and you've only got one of them, and it's going by, but you're making something out of it, and you don't want to just work for somebody, work for their purpose. You want to work for your purpose, and their work, their company could help you with your purpose, maybe, if you can see it that way. Otherwise, you've got to start your own. And then you've got a lot of challenges. You've got to face that courage. One of the reasons people can't be an entrepreneur is because they can't stand the terror of holding a company, meeting the payroll, being responsible for this thing living, because it's your own life. And if you can't handle the terror, go work for somebody. But if you can
Yeah.
handle it, if you can build that capacity, that's in your heart. I want to show people how to build the capacity of their heart to hold those kinds of energies, those kinds of emotions.
Well, then I'll go off that. We have a signature question that we ask all of our podcast guests because this podcast is called What It Takes. And I'm going to customize that a little bit. Why don't you talk a little bit about what does it take for business owners to lead with the heart in today's fast-paced world?
You might think that I'm going to say be quieter and calmer. And I'd say no. You've got to move fast because you've got to know the direction. And so you got to make decisions very, very quickly and accurately. And you got to do it right. You only have a couple of chances. You can reinvent yourself later, but you've got to go do it quick. And your heart knows things that your mind doesn't know. You've got to find a way to ask your heart questions and get answers. And you can do that.
That's great. That's great. I feel like we just scratched the surface on some of these things. I have a feeling you and we should talk a little bit more offline. But for our listeners, if you are just as intrigued as I am, where can people find you and learn more about what you're doing, either personally or professionally, as you're doing here with your business? Where can they find you?
My wife and I run this company called IAM Heart. I'm Heart. And that's the point. It's like, actually, what are we anyway? We're just hearts. The mind is insignificant compared to the heart. IAMheart.org. That's where we are.
All right, iamheart.org. Well, wow, what an inspiring journey from blending corporate expertise with heart-centered mindfulness to creating a business that's quite literally changing lives. Bear has shown us what it truly means and what it takes to lead with heart. So, if today's episode resonated with you, please don't forget to check out iamheart.org, learn more about his work and the transformative practice of heart rhythm meditation. You can also find him on Instagram at Heart Mediation for daily inspiration. So, thank you for tuning in to today's episode of What It Takes. If you enjoyed it, please leave a review, share it with someone who could use a little heart-centered inspiration for their life. And until next time, keep pursuing what it takes to succeed on your own terms. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Jamie.